What we wanted to do was set up this session was just to go back and look at a couple ABCD basics. And again, looking through who's online, I think just about all of you have sat through at least one session where we really dug into ABCD basics. So I just want to kind of hit the high points and then take a second, see if there's any questions before we move on. A big thing we're going to do today is talk about how do we make the invisible visible. And that is such an incredibly important part of an asset-based practice, is there are all these things in our communities that we just assume, but we don't name them. We don't make them visible. We don't talk about them. So somehow they just sort of get not exactly ignored, but certainly not paid attention to. And then the part on the bottom here is just so incredibly important of why we want to collaborate, why we want to do this as a team, is because every community has more potential resources than any one of us knows. You can go to the next slide. As we talk about this whole idea of, well, I mean, so much of what we're doing today is strengths-based, asset-based, self-fulfilling prophecy, believing in ourselves. So much of this is within the context of an asset-based approach, because we're talking about what's right, not what's wrong. We're talking about what's possible, not what's not possible. So you look through all those words, you see that we've had many conversations this week about the power of invitation and inviting people in earlier into the process so we have the opportunity to co-create. We've talked extensively about the power of incrementalism. And Lindsay Jarecki just did a wonderful job earlier today talking about the whole idea that if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go together, you have to sort of slow it down a little bit. But if you want it to go well and you want it to really stick, it's probably going to take some time and some effort. And the process is almost always worth the investment in order for it to be community-led and community-owned. You can go to the next one. And in the belonging session that we did earlier this week, we really focused in on people belong through having their gifts and talents received and appreciated. We think about that strengths-based approach. We really think about what are the gifts that we have to share with the world. Think about times when you really felt a sense of ownership. You really felt a sense of sort of personal power, personal satisfaction, gratification of a job well done. And it's because you had the opportunity to share your best with other people. And that's incredibly important. And then if we wrap all of that together within these community-based volunteer associations, that really is a recipe for building power, having a more positive self-fulfilling prophecy in our home place, really helping ourselves to be more confident. And all of those things are going to lead to being more courageous together. So you can go to the next one. And to just sort of wrap this up, and again, we can certainly have some conversation about it, but we are the people we've been waiting for. And if we'll do this work together in place and invite other people in to help, that's really powerful. The most important word in all of the NCF system is with. And that's the way we want all of our community building work to work, is with one another. We're not doing things to people or for people. We're doing work with people, because that's how we build community. And that's how we build ourselves, so we can even be better at helping others have a great life as well. So that's a quick little ABCD wrap up. Are there any questions or comments, other things some of my colleagues would like to share before we move on to the next part? Okay, I'm complete.
Dina, I'm looking for your picture to spotlight you to move into the next part. So if you just say something, it'll bring you up for me.
I will say something for sure. Before we get started on my Superpowers exercise, I was just really thinking about this being the last session and how grateful I am to everybody in the network and my colleagues for being agile, especially Tuesday. And I'm really grateful to be involved with an organization that not only appreciates everyone's superpowers, but really helps us build on those. So I'm just feeling a little grateful today. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Dina Beck. I'm an affiliated fund development coordinator located 5 miles north of Minden. I serve South Central and Southeast Nebraska. And I'm really happy to talk with you about Superpowers. It is an NCF activity based on Clifton StrengthsFinder and can be conducted in your FAC, ask your coordinator or me. Today, I'm just going to really be reviewing the basics of it. It's a really fun exercise. Takes about maybe 45 minutes to complete, and there's a lot more to it than what we're going to talk about today. But I just wanted to give you a little taste, especially when we've been talking about belonging and people's skills and talents and all of that. So I think it's really fun and insightful to identify and celebrate your strengths, AKA your superpower. And then as you strive to serve your community, just making you realize, maybe just bring it to the surface that that is your strength and how you can better use that and therefore love yourself. It's been done across the network with new and existing FACs, sometimes with new folks involved. And it's really, I think, bringing some insight to the group as well as motivation to make a conscious effort to really use those strengths and also to use the strengths of others. We're going to have about 10 minutes in the breakout rooms. Welcome back, everyone. I think everyone is back from their breakout room. I hope you had some good discussions about your strengths, the ones you chose, and maybe one that you wanted to share that wasn't on that list, and that's okay. We've talked a lot this week, and as Jeff mentioned, many of you have been on before this week, earlier this week, I should say, and we've talked a lot about belonging and feeling like your strengths are needed. And so I'm hopeful that when you did this exercise, it just made you realize what your strengths are and maybe how you can better utilize them. And also realizing what strengths others have and appreciating them and how they can be brought to light and utilized. I want you to remember that in strong teams, each member is invited to use their own unique strength, and not one person can have all of these strengths that are needed to make a good team. Emily is going to share a photo from a superpower exercise. And so we have these lovely cards with a graphic that also has the definition of the superpower. And then each participant typically puts their name on 3 sticky notes and then self-identifies their top 3 superpowers. And so it's really fun, I think, to step back a little bit and take a look at the wall and see all the incredible strengths there. And
Dina, you are cutting out a little. Are you back?
To see what might be imagined. I'll try taking my video off. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, yes. So some of those strengths are not present in the team. So what a great recruitment tool. So let's say, put yourself in the donor's shoes, which are the Chuck Taylors on your left-hand side. If no one has that in your team, and that's something that's important, what a great tool for recruitment. If you know someone that has that skill, to come to them and say, I know that you have this, you could also call it empathy. We really need that on our team. No one really has that strength. And so I think that's been really helpful to FACs as they continue to move forward. As you continue work in your community, your FAC, your family, your community, and beyond, keep your strength in mind and how you might use it. Maybe in a different way, or use it more so to make things better. I hope you realize what your superpower is and maybe appreciate those of your friends and colleagues, but also maybe people that you don't quite know. And you can find out what their superpowers might be and how you can help them get those plugged in. This is also a tool that's available for you in your FAC. Please reach out to me or your coordinator um, and let us know how we might be able to help you. I will pass the baton to my lovely colleague, Kara, who is going to share a process of loving your community.
Thank you so much, Dina. I think that's so powerful to think, Superpowers is a great way for us humble Nebraskans to unleash our own abundance, right? It's sometimes we are too humble to share ourselves fully with our communities. And it's great to be able to identify what you see in yourself and what you see in others so that you can come together as a powerful team. So now that we've kind of done that in the first half and thought about how we can make sure that we are honoring our own strengths in our community, I want us to think now on the wider scale about how all of those assets come together, or how those superpowers come together throughout the whole community. One of the tenets of NCF also, right, is as we're uncovering these assets, that no one person knows them all. Really, by bringing other folks in and talking and having these conversations that we've been talking about all week, that is how we learn all of the great assets of our community. One of the great tools to help us kind of bring that in, right? That's a lot of conversations, a lot of knowledge. What do we do with all that? What's that mean? A lot of people have heard the words asset mapping, right? So the idea of asset mapping is to get those assets down together on paper. But the important part is to remember that the asset map is not the final product. It is really just the initial step. It's you starting to discover the greatness in your community and drawing it in. And there's been some amazing work done in our network in asset mapping in Valley County. And one of our good friends, consultant Becky Bozen, has been working in Valley County on ever since the Dream Switch, and before that even, on helping them find their assets and bring them to bear. So we'd love it if she would share with us a little bit about the work's going on in Valley County. Becky? Are you temporarily muted there, Becky?
I'm gonna.
Sorry,
There you
guys.
go.
Hi, good afternoon. I promise that you'll be able to hear the rest of what, what I have to say. It's so nice to be with everyone this afternoon to talk a little bit about asset mapping. What is ABCD asset mapping? It's an engaging process that NCF can help co-create with your FAC and community. What does it do? First off, it unleashes goodness. It cultivates community energy. It helps identify opportunity and innovation. And maybe most importantly, it makes what's invisible in your place visible. So if we think about Dina's superpower exercise and looking at the superpowers that didn't have sticky notes, you can think about the opportunity of approaching people you know who may have those superpowers, but you can also think about the people you don't yet know in your community, or the people you know that you haven't really had a conversation with about their assets and their superpowers. So it's really a divine tool. The best part, it's resident led, which means that you steer the process of asset mapping in your own place. As Kara mentioned, I've had the opportunity to work alongside Valley County's FAC. In March 2020, they decided to take a deep dive into what started out as arts and cultural asset mapping. Got to put the brakes on for a minute, because when we say March 2020, immediately your mind might go to the onset of the pandemic. This was not a deterrent for the folks of Valley County. Instead, it completely informed their process. So they dug into a virtual process via Zoom, via telephone, and via Google Duo to make sure they could connect to their community in asset mapping. How did they get started? It was really quite simple. They had the desire to know more about their FAC, more about themselves, and more about their neighbors. They were curious about their community. I'd like to go to a slide that we have that will help us sort of integrate asset mapping into abundancy. Emily, could we have the sponge and the egg slide, please? Thank you so much. So maybe you've seen this during training this week. There's the egg and the sponge. We invite you to think of your FAC like a sponge instead of an egg. We've talked a lot this week about the power of invitation, inclusion, and belonging. And with an egg, you literally have to crack the egg to get to what's inside. The sponge, of course, is open, it's porous, it absorbs what's around it. And I think this is really important to mention. When you think about taking risks as an FAC, when you think about taking on new ideas, be the sponge, because the sponge can take all that stuff in and still retain its shape. We can apply that to your values as an FAC, right? You can absorb all that goodness, but you are who you are. Your values are your values, and that allows you to try some new things. In Valley County, we worked on contact tracing, and there were some unexpected outcomes. Again, when I say contact tracing, you might go straight to the pandemic, but this is contact tracing goodness. Valley County citizens, we talked about having a list or an inventory or a map. That's one part of asset mapping, but that's not where the process began for Valley County. The process began because they simply wanted to know each other better. So they got started with a simple, modest action, and that is the passionate people at the center. And in ABCD, often it's a small group at the center that gets the momentum going. That small group started calling their creative neighbors. And as the assets mapping process took shape, remember that I said that they were started out with arts and cultural assets mapping. They sort of renamed their own process to arts, cultural, creative, and innovative assets mapping. Those are the folks they wanted to talk to in their community. So neighbors started picking up the phone and calling their creative neighbors to have a simple conversation. Hey, we love this about you. Tell us more about this. What opportunities do you see to use these gifts that you have to further the dreams of our community? What are your dreams and what would you like to see happen? This started, and what happened as a result, which was one of the surprises, was people started to say, oh yeah, this is my dream and this is how I'd like to contribute, but have you talked to so-and-so? So in each conversation, residents of Valley County started to offer 3 or 4 extra names of people that they wanted us to talk to about their own creative and innovative and artistic gifts. So imagine this. You're sitting in your kitchen and the phone rings and you pick it up and you're getting a phone call out of the blue that 5 or 6 people in your own community said you were awesome this week. When that happened, it unleashed so much goodness. It started to empower citizens to really take their gifts. As Kara mentioned, as Midwesterners, we're very modest. We don't go on about our skills and our talents, but when your neighbor points them out, it's really empowering. It's a little easier to own. So this is how we started to pull people in from the outside, because sometimes the names that were being named in terms of creativity were not people naturally named at the center, or were people on the outskirts. And we know that innovation comes from the fringes. So Valley County's FAC and the leaders of this asset mapping movement were really smart, because they knew that there are some dreams they're working on, that they needed that innovation from the outside. So they started pulling people in. We used both formal and informal methods for this. So as I said, the spreadsheet, good way to get started. A map, an inventory is great, but it's the really authentic conversations between neighbors and neighbors lifting neighbors up that led to amazing outcomes in Valley County. And here's the nice thing. It really doesn't matter whether you are a person who loves tangible outcomes or intangible outcomes. Asset mapping provides both. And here are some of both. So in a 5-month window, 207 creative, artistic, or innovative assets were identified from within Valley County. That means as an outside helper, you saw Jeff's slide about help. It was only my place to help, not to do too. And Valley County is the only place that can really name its own assets, not me, right? So they named 207 arts and cultural creative assets. 30 out of the 30 individuals that I had the pleasure of interviewing naturally volunteered neighbors and places and organizations and projects to go on that map. So I didn't have to say, is there anyone else I should talk to? They offered that up front. From this process in the last 5 months, Valley County residents have created what they call the Spark Team, which is a small informal group who, through the process of conversation in the asset mapping interviews, offered that they would like to be integral in helping community dreams come to life. So that means that this informal organization of citizens is at the ready when someone in the Valley County community or area has a dream and needs a listener, needs a sounding board, needs a cheerleader. The Spark Team rallies, and they are just getting started, and there's a core group that's growing. But the idea is that long after this process is, this 5-month process is done, they are carrying the support of dreams into the future, and the team is bringing their individual assets. There are lawyers and painters and shopkeepers who are part of the Spark Team. Valley County also has started to create something called Sparks of the Valley, in which they're taking the results of the asset mapping so far, combining them with future efforts, and creating their own storytelling units through the asset mapping process. So there will be videos on websites, there will be public events where they're sharing. They're even talking about utilizing some of this at their annual celebration this year. Assets mapping in terms of intangibles started to reunite formerly disconnected citizens, and new dreams were revealed. We created a report that documents every step and the goodness unleashed along the way. That's a living document that goes from my hands to Valley County's hands, because now they will take their own story forward. Valley County is doing an amazing job of taking these assets and leveraging them to tackle non-conventional ideas like leadership succession and storefronts and entrepreneurship. Valley County can tell their own story. They have everything they need. And in fact, every community has everything they need. Sometimes you just got to call a neighbor. So remember, all of this started so simply. Valley County had a curiosity and a willingness to take a first step. Here's the good news. NCF can help you dive into an asset mapping process that meets you where you are, that discovers your community's unique interests or your FAC's priorities, or they can help you flesh out an existing asset mapping process if you hear one part of this and it sounds good and you're kind of working on it, but you would like to expand what that means for your community and FAC. Any topic is worth exploring. Anything is worth doing an inventory of. And it's really interesting how it doesn't quite matter if it's heritage tourism or arts and culture or storefronts. It all intertwines in the end because people start to connect and intertwine. A great example of that in Valley County is when we started with an arts and cultural asset map, we had everything from a lifelong professional musician to a devoted volunteer who makes a storefront attractive and welcoming to the community. So everyone has a place in asset mapping. I encourage you to use these tools as a way of loving yourself, loving your community, and as a way to discover even more goodness in your own place. Thanks, Kara.
Thank you, Becky. That was awesome. Especially on the 4th day in the afternoon, like we need a wake up bell. No, we had Becky. That was awesome. There is so much greatness happening in Valley County. It is amazing. And this can happen in any community. And I love how all of these things fold together. If we remember the session that Christine Gale did about trust-based philanthropy, right? This feeds right into that getting to know your community. This is one way to get to know your community is talk to folks, right? So we're gonna have another breakout We're going to be getting ready for that now. And what we'd like you to do is do a little experiment in asset mapping in your breakout room. So think about your town and reflect on 3 things that you would like to share. So if you had a guest coming to town and you were going to show them the 3 best things in town, what would that be? Or if a new resident moved to town and you wanted to share with them 3 wonderful things that they need to take part in. Maybe it's an event, or maybe it's a store, or it's just getting to know this great lady at church. What are 3 great assets in your community? If you reflect on that, share that with your group, and maybe even write them down. Take them back to your FAC and start a map. All right, we'll see you back in a little bit. Enjoy your group. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, guys. We hope you had a great conversation. We are going to do a little Q&A. So if you do have any questions specifically about superpowers, about asset mapping, or really just about anything that we've covered this week, I think we have a lot of experts in the room. If you have a question you'd like answered, go ahead and put that in the chat and we will pull those out and get those answered for you before we are done. One of the things that I wanted to kind of draw out from our session today, or to kind of highlight something we're excited about coming up in the future, and something we did last summer, was our interns. So as you guys know, or many of you know, we had 13 hometown interns. So these were young college students who were in their hometowns doing good work for the summer. And a lot of the work they did was around asset mapping. In fact, several of them did asset maps. They are pieces that are kept in their community and will be going forward. So, and all of them in some nature really worked in the ABCD asset mapping. So that is a great benefit for our communities. And we're going to be having interns again next summer, hopefully over the winter break. Winterns, I believe they are called. So look for more of that goodness happening in our communities. And Dina, do we have any questions that we have there yet?
I have not seen any.
Why don't we just, Tammy, would you unmute yourself and share what you just shared in the chat? I think that's a great one to talk about.
Sure. As we visited in our breakout room, it became apparent to me that it would be fun to do something similar with our fund advisory committee, or any local group really that you have a variety of people coming together, because I think we often make assumptions about each other and what someone's role is, even if you can acknowledge that out loud or not. And I think each person also kind of has an assumption about themselves. And I liked that we were kind of forced to pick something, which I first thought, what in the world am I, whatever. And then it forces you to grab a thing and probably say what's truly kind of maybe sometimes buried under some layers of your consciousness, and just put it out there. So I think I'll share that with my group as a way to get to know each other better, and perhaps see how we line up and where people's gifts are. So that's what I was thinking when I posted that.
Thank you, Tammy. That is a great segue to something else I would love to let you know. I mean, we love to hear that you're finding these nuggets of goodness throughout the week that you can take back and use, right? I mean, the fact that you found an icebreaker useful is super exciting to hear. But really, everything we're showing you today, superpowers, this asset mapping, all of these are tools that can help really bring your community's dreams out, right? That's what we're really talking about. This is Dreams Welcome Week. And this whole week, all the things we've been talking about, is how can we make the dreams of Nebraska a reality? How can we make our places better? So hopefully you'll find tools all over the place. Talk to your coordinator, call the Lincoln office, and talk to other folks in the network if you have questions. All right, do we have anything else in the chat? And if not, does anyone just want to unmute and share some end of the week goodness? I know it's late on the afternoon, the last day.
Nancy from Coleridge, and I'm just going to share that there's probably one other person in our FAC that did tune into some of the webinars, but I am thrilled that I got to listen to so many all week. Now, my task is to get interest in, in what I've learned. So, and last year I didn't find people particularly interested in the feedback I provided. So I don't know. I'll just try my best. Kara?
We can do it, Nancy.
I think we should asset map a bunch of stuff, but we have so many assets, and I feel good. And we're coming together tonight. We're going to listen to the closing all together. I'm thrilled about that, and I feel really, I just really, although it's nicer to see all of you, to be able to have all this learning has just been magnificent. And I almost didn't do it because I felt stubborn, and I thought, what the heck is wrong with me? Get moving. But I'm glad I did.
Nancy, thank you for saying this. I think by sharing the feeling that lots of people have, right? And that leads me to highlight also, remember, if you go to that handout page, all the PowerPoints from the week are there, all the kind of like tools and handouts that folks have referenced, that's all on that page. And yes, Nancy, I will be in Coleridge, and anyone else's coordinator. I'm sure we are happy to bring any of this knowledge into your community. And these are being recorded, so you'll also be able to direct friends, invite them over for drinks, and then strategically have your TV on.
Aren't we supposed to be having a party rather than a meeting, right, Kara?
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Kara, can I chime in? In our last breakout, we talked about Ord, Ogallala, and McCooks. I mean, you want to talk about assets. It was an awesome conversation. But if I can put Chad on the spot, because he described a walking tour that he would take someone on, ending with a pretty powerful message, I think, for that just relates to so much of what we've talked about this week at the Norris House. So Chad, if I might put you on the spot to share your walking tour description, that would be awesome.
Sure, I'm glad to do that. So I said I would start downtown, and I would not let people get in their cars. I would keep them on foot, and I would start at our railroad depot, and I would walk up kind of our historical and unique downtown, our stretch of Norris Avenue, and hopefully have doors open to the buildings along that stretch so people could just go inside and see the incredible kind of hidden assets that a community like ours has in terms of its buildings and wood floors and brick walls and a underneath tunnel that was used during Prohibition, and just have people think about how we could activate those assets, and in ways those assets are activated with Matt's Bakery, with Nolan and Yates, but there's much, much, much more that can be done. I would then kind of get them to the Frank Lloyd Wright House, which is kind of a shining example of how a visionary architect can occupy a space in creative, imaginative ways and have a tremendous legacy for doing that. And I think that's an invitation to all of us to be creative and think about how we can put something in a space that wasn't there before, that can stand the test of time and both have exterior and interior imagination. And then I would get to the Norris home, and I would have people think about the incredible legacy of George Norris that he's famous in Nebraska for, but not often well understood for how much he was about bridging divisions and not being driven by party and partisanship, but crossing party lines to make things happen, like electricity in rural areas, like harnessing the power of water to create energy, and really doing the hard work to make agreements with people that may not come from the same place or may not come from the same political party or perspective, but you make something happen that wasn't there before. And George Norris is really a invitation to all Nebraskans to think about how do we honor that legacy in terms of what we create for our future. I'm complete.
Thanks you, Chad. That's a great invitation to McCook next year, right?
Absolutely. Please.
That also makes me think tonight we do have one more event, obviously, as part of our Dreams Welcome Week, and that is this evening's live stream. I have said for years, even before I was on staff, I always say NCF's annual celebration is the best Nebraska pep rally in the state. Like if you want to love being a Nebraskan, NCF's annual banquet is the place to be. Thank you, Tammy Day, for opening that door for me years ago.
Cara, can I just say,
Please, Michael.
because I don't think live streaming can put any chat on it. Just I want to thank everybody for making me feel so very welcome over this last four days. It hasn't been a toil to stay up late. Really look forward. I've learned so much from everybody. So thank everybody for sharing their expertise, their learning, their experiences, and also thank you for everybody's commitment to their hometown and the state of Nebraska. Well done. And thank you to all the people who organized this. This could not have been easy. And I really didn't, learning about your hacking was something, how are you going to manage it? Seamless. Well done.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Well, if I get to be the teacher that lets people out early, that's pretty exciting. Is there anything else in the chat that I need to share, Dina? Or I get to share?
The link to the session survey. If you would give us some feedback about that, we would greatly appreciate it.
Yes. And if you have folks to invite to tonight's live stream, just at our website, nebcomfound, NEBCOMM, found.org, sorry. Go to our website. It's right on the front page. Direct people there. It is going to be a great time tonight. I hear maybe bring tissues and a beverage of your choice. Anything else from the group? Thank you, friends. I can't wait till we get to be together. Jeff, would you like to give us a parting word?
Oh, I would be happy to. Thank you. First of all, to all of my colleagues for doing such an amazing job this week. Michael, you're absolutely right. This wasn't easy to pull off. So there's been hours and hours and weeks of really, really hard work and trying to figure out how would we make online sessions like this interactive. So we have tried, and we really would appreciate feedback from all of you on how we could continue to get better on that. And then the other people I want to thank is everybody in the NCF network, because together we are better. And I think this week, I feel like I've gotten better and I've learned a lot and I've gotten connected to more people. And I hope each and every one of you feel the same way. So I just feel really, really blessed to be able to spend my time doing this work with all of you. So looking forward to seeing all of you tonight. Thank you so much. And I guess Kara's letting us out of class early, so we'll see you.